Hi, my name is Lisa Courtney, and I will be your host on the Elephant Method podcast. Today's episode: Why I Chose the Market over the Masters. Now, it's quite interesting because I first got into non English communication, and it wasn't through teaching, it was actually through love, or maybe lust. I fell in love with a man I believed was Spanish, who I later learned was actually Moroccan and living in Spain. And in that process, I really lost myself. Before 2016, I had never lived outside the US. Growing up in Oregon, my world felt relatively small. In the Midwest, we really only knew two cultures, Mexican and American, and I didn't yet understand the vast constellation of different nationalities, identities, and inner worlds that exist beyond the borders of the US. Then on December 22nd, 2016, everything changed. I was traveling to Spain during a short break from school in England. 3 weeks in total. I went to Spain, Italy, and Israel. I was only in Spain for 10 days, but those 10 days changed the trajectory of my life. At the time, England made sense. England was familiar. It was structured, relatively the same, predictable, and orderly. The system was easy for me to understand and I could easily assimilate to the culture. It felt in many ways like America, just with a different accent. The weather was rainy, like in Oregon, too. Something else they had in common. But the food, not good. I don't recommend it. And while people were polite, they were still distant. They were reserved. And you obeyed the silence on the tube. Oh, the tube is actually the subway in England. You stood apart. You kept to yourself and you knew how to be competent there. You knew how to function. You knew how to disappear in the correctness. But in Spain, that world was loud. It was totally different. It was warm. It was close. And you even kissed strangers on the cheek when you met them for the very first time. And the metro, poof, difference between night and day in England versus Spain, because in the metro, the Spaniards would speak over themselves. They'd talk and it'd get louder and louder and louder. It's like, oh, you had to be kind of going, oh, plug your ears. What are they saying? But life happened out loud. And that was what was amazing to me. There was a physical closeness, a warmth that I'd not felt in America or in England. And it was a visceral feeling. And I didn't just observe it, I felt it to my core. And then I met him at an open air market where he had worked for several years. He invited me into his stall, and I just couldn't help myself. I had to take his invitation. I was trying to communicate in my broken Spanish, probably hovering around an A2 level, doing my best to translate every word in my head. He was tall, he had dark brown eyes and wavy jet black hair. His smile was as big as the Grand Canyon, and you could really feel his radiance from across the room. There was something unmistakable about him. He was confident, he was warm, he was grounded, and he really pulled me in. At one point, a customer approached him and began asking questions. The conversation stretched longer than I was comfortable with, so I got up and I was leaving. But then what he did is he reached over with his hand and pressed onto my white winter coat, and I could feel his hand through this really thick coat. And it wasn't forceful, it was just an intentional pause or barrier to keep me from leaving. So I respected that and I sat back down. When he looked at me, he says, Un momento. I'm on, okay. And I waited. After the customer left, he turned his attention back to me and asked me for my phone number. That was really challenging because I scrambled to find the numbers. What are they? Uno, dos, tres. Vale. And so I was able to find my number. I wasn't flirting. I wasn't being coy. I was trying to translate in real time, how much pressure it is to try and give some guy your number. I wished him un buen dia and I walked away, not knowing if I would ever really hear from him again, but trying to make sense of what just happened. Later that evening, though, the phone rang. Right? I'm in Spain. I'd only been there for 2 days. I was all alone by myself in a country I didn't know, in a language I didn't speak very well, but it was him. I remembered trying to hold my elation into my body while focusing on every word he said. I wasn't just listening, I was calculating, repeating his words back to myself like a lifeline. After that, I might have misunderstood him, so I thought I'd go ahead and ask a question. I felt like it was a little brave. I asked, ¿Tú quieres un cita conmigo? Right? You want a date with me? He said, Oh, sí, sí. Okay, yes, okay. I was proud of myself. I understood. And then I asked him another question. ¿A qué hora? What time? He said, A las 9. And I'm counting in my head. Okay, 9 o'clock. Vale. I had a date. I was all, whoa, this happened so fast. And in that moment, I realized something that what would take years to understand. Language isn't just about words, it's about power, identity, and desire, and who you become when you're not fully fluent. Soon after, I faced a choice. I could stay in England in a system I understood, in a culture that felt safe, and in a language that didn't require me to change who I was. Or I could choose Spain, a place that asked more of me linguistically, emotionally, humanly. Spain didn't just change my language, it changed my identity. It required me to be present, imperfect, exposed, and yes, there was him. But it wasn't just him. It was the way that Spain made me feel alive. I chose the market. For the next 3 years, I lived in Spain. I studied the mechanics of English. And yes, but more importantly, I lived the struggle of communication every single day. I was teaching students how to find their voice in English while I was finding mine in Spanish. That's where the elephant method was born. Not in a classroom, not in a textbook, but in the gaps between the language education teaches and what humans actually experience when their hearts, identity, and futures are on the line. This podcast exists for millions, no, actually over 1 billion non native English speakers in the world who live inside this tension every single day. I see you, I understand you, and that's because I have been you. And when you're ready, let's talk about the elephant in the room. In the elephant method, we don't just listen to try and repeat what we're going to say. We listen with our heart, we connect, and we correct with respect. If you ever felt like there's a gap between your English and what you're trying to communicate, get in touch because I know that I have the skills and ability to help you be a confident, clearer speaker when you're in your second language. Thanks for today, and I look forward to seeing you soon.